Hey everybody, Mike with Games Played Badly, and today on Session 0 I'm talking to Melody from, let me get this right, Mother Multiverse Media. MMM is what I call it. And she's here to talk about her brand new game that's coming out called Trash Mob, where you get to play the mob as opposed to playing the adventurer. That sounds like a lot of fun. I cannot wait to talk. I'm just like super excited about this game. I can't wait to talk to her about it. And also, I wanted to show off my shirt. Like that shirt? Gemmed Firefly sent me a shirt because I won an actual. I actually won something, which is amazing. And on top of that, they've been gracious enough to give me a discount code. So if you go to gemmedfirefly.com, go ahead and peruse and get whatever you like. And then add the code on checkout, badly, B-A-D-L-Y, 15 for 15% off your order. Go check it out. They're pretty amazing, and I'm going to be featuring some additional shirts that I purchased myself in future videos. So either way, let's go ahead and get chatting. That interview starts now. Hi, Melody. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, bright day.
It is apparently a very bright day. It is definitely blowing out my camera a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm in the basement, so I'm like in basically the ground level of hell. But the sun is definitely out today, and it is shining brightly. So I get it. You are somebody who, looking at your website, has a ton of stuff out there, but you have a new project that you're telling me about on Twitter that I was super excited about called Trash Mob. So I really need to hear about this game because I already want to play it.
Okay, awesome. So Trash Mob is a game that is meant to sort of emulate certain isekai stories, which are stories where a person goes to another world. In specific with Trash Mob, you play someone who has died. They reincarnate in a fantasy world as some kind of weak monster in an extreme environment, and then they have to survive. And as they survive, they will get more and more powerful as these worlds work under kind of like video game RPG rules. Mm-hmm. And so you slowly but surely amass power until you kind of become like this super OP main protagonist anime god character. and that's how the game goes.
So from that standpoint, there are 12 different monsters that you can choose to play.
There are 16.
16 different.
Yeah. So basic like character creation, the first thing you do is you kind of try to, because it's built so that you can play it as a solo game. You can play it with friends and no GM, or you can do a GM version of the game, depending on what you want to do. Now, the base standpoint of it is the solo version. And so a lot of what you want to do is make sure there's surprises for people as they kind of play the game. Mm-hmm. Because, if things are unpredictable, well, that's what makes it fun, right? Because otherwise you're watching a story and you just know everything that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you want to do is you want to come up with your person. Now, if you're playing a solo game, I think there's absolutely no shame if you want to entirely Mary Sue it and be like, okay, but what if I died? And then I get stuck as this monster. Okay, yeah, like do it. Have fun with it. But you might only do that once and go, okay, I don't want to do that again. And so you'll come up with a character. So you want to figure out who your character is ahead of time. And then you got to figure out how they died. There's a chart that gives you some options for that, and those have some minor effects on the game. Some characters die doing some sort of noble deed, and that's the reason why they suddenly reincarnate in this other world as a sort of, karmic, like, okay, you're needed here to do something. Mm-hmm. Where other characters were terrible, and then it's like, no, you're here because you deserve it. This is your punishment for how you lived in life. So it just depends. But then you roll on a chart, and there are 16 different mobs you can start as, and you start at level 1. And then you roll also to see where you're starting at, what your starting zone looks like. And there's 4 different zones for that. So yeah, and then you pick 1 extra power when you start. Mm-hmm. And that's to kind of represent some variation within a type. So, for instance, the first chart, the 4 different types of monsters you play, there are vermin, there are domestic, there are undead, and then there are small humanoids. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, if you roll vermin, you could get bug vermin. And so bug vermin, they get like a poison attack and they get vertical movement because they're creepy crawlers. Either they can climb up a wall or they can fly with buzzy wings or they burrow underground or however they get around, they're able to kind of go up and down more, right, in their environment. And so that skill represents that and it gives you some more exploration options as you go. And you also get the sneak skill, which is the generic skill for all vermin because they're always skidding around in the shadows and stuff. But past that, you've only got so much to define it. So if, say, you're going to play like, I don't know, like a really heavy beetle or something, you're like, yeah, I want to be like an armored beetle. You might pick up resistance to bashing damage as your like extra thing, and that kind of defines your species a little more, right? Or if, say, you're playing a humanoid and your character in their past life was literally like a machine shop person, right? You might take the scavenge weapon power as an extra because you're like, but I really could build a weapon out of just about anything, right. Like, because you actually have that skill. So you take a skill either to represent who you were or what you are now as kind of an extra thing to give your character a little uniqueness. And then you go. And from there, it's exploration driven. But the exploration charts have weighted parts to them to create various plot points to occur. So that it isn't just I'm wandering around a map and murdering monsters, which there will be a lot of. That is definitely a thing. There will also quite possibly be points where you have to run away and get away from things because the amount of times you will poke your head into a door and suddenly be like, okay, how bad is this going to be? I'm level 1. Okay, it's level 3. That's not so bad. They're in a pack of 8. Okay, that's bad. Yeah, right. You might just have to take off for a bit.
Get more powerful and circle around and come back.
Yeah, you can get more powerful and circle around and come back. A lot of it is played from a very what if standpoint because, like I said, you might marry Sue and it's, well, what do I do in this situation? If you meet a monster you can't beat, how are you going to find a way around it? Or where else will you go? Or what will you do to try and survive? And the system itself is fairly simple and flexible on a lot of these points. The basic system is if you can find something to give you an advantage on something, give yourself a bonus dice for being able to use that skill or ability. And so then you roll and you're rolling to try and find your highest. And this is a D4 system. I think I chose D4 just because I was like, this is a game about playing the weakest of monsters, so we're going to use the weakest of dice. I was use the very smallest one. And so a lot of times your goal is you're hoping to get 4s or higher. And so the maximum dice pool you can have is 4 dice. And there's also penalties that'll go into it. So the most dice you can have is plus 4-sided dice. And you're going to roll that and look for whatever your highest is. So if you roll a 4, that's your highest. If you have like 3s and then all 1s, well, still the 3 is your highest. On the other hand, you can hit situations that give you penalty dice or you're just not as suited for, or you get highly injured or whatever else happens. In those cases, the lowest dice pool you can get is negative 4-die-4, in which case you roll 4 dice and you take the lowest out of them. So that's a place you want to avoid if you can while you're playing the game. Things can go really bad from there.
How many players is this designed for? Because you mentioned that there's a solo version, there is a DM-less version, and then there is a DM version.
Yeah, and I'm playtesting all the time, but with playing by yourself, it goes fairly smoothly. With having another player, the basic difference is that you've got teamwork going for you as a thing. And the other factor is, though, well, your XP may slow down because occasionally you're working together, and so you're splitting how the levels are going to go. Leveling in it is fairly simplified. It's a comparison of you to your enemy or the situation at hand. So if you take out a higher level enemy, you're going to get 1 level for doing that. And if there's 2 of you playing, well, you're going to have to take out 2 higher level enemies for that to work. If you're fighting equal level enemies, you have to take out a number equal to the level you currently are. So that gets harder and harder to do. One of the things about this game is that leveling is not predictable. When you gain a level, like that part will be predictable. Like, I beat the bad guy, I'm going to get a level up. Neat. So you get a level, and then you start rolling on the leveling twist chart. And so this kind of emulates the idea that you're in this video game reality. You don't know how its physics are going to go. Like if you pick up a new, RPG, it's like a video game RPG, and start playing it, you'll start getting abilities. You will, but you won't predict what they are if you haven't read a strategy guide or something, right?
Right.
It's just like, oh, I've suddenly got triple strike. I wonder what that does. So you get leveling twists. So sometimes you'll get something that's just a basic progression of what you already got. Like, okay, yep, I got sneakier and I got a better attack of the attack I already had. And, whatever resistance I had leveled up. But sometimes you get more unpredictable things. Sometimes you might get, oh, I just got a skill out of a category that's completely outside of me. Like I just gained a humanoid skill, even though I'm playing vermin right now. And so now I have the ability to make traps. So I'm going to set traps in all my fights and use those to get ahead. And at the higher echelons, as you level up, you will get better and better stuff. One of the things is if you start rolling really good or you start getting bonuses to your leveling rolls, which will inevitably happen, but how much may depend on a little bit of luck and a little bit on what you choose to do.
Right.
You will start getting things like evolutions where, okay, you lost 5 levels, but all of your skills just suddenly shoot up for you. And that's a cool time. The aesthetics of the game are what you want them to be. So, for instance, say you're playing a kobold. Well, how do you like your kobolds? Because the aesthetics don't change the system. So if you want to be like a rat-faced kobold, you can do that. Or if you want to be the more modern dragon kobold, you can do that. Or if you're like, I want to play the really cutesy anime one that has like the fuzzy big ears, it's like, yeah, okay, you play that one. Whichever one you want to do is fine. But along those aesthetic lines, so evolutions are a great time where you can be like, well, I just evolved my kobold. I'm going to call my new kobold green kobold because I just leveled up. Like now I have some extra abilities in oomph, or dire kobold if you're feeling you want to be giant or something like that. Right. So you get to kind of play around with titles and things. Further than evolution is new form. This is kind of where you've cracked the code and somehow you've regained some of your humanity. If you didn't have the humanoid skill yet, you get it. You get some extra attacks and things. You can talk to people again. And so a lot of that kind of plays in is that the leveling chart, as it kind of grows up, sort of shapes some of how your story is going to go.
Right.
And eventually you get the last entry, which is Apex, at which point a lot of things start to get weighed in your favor and you'll start kind of running roughshod over a lot of the dungeon. Although there's always a bigger fish in the pond.
I'm sure.
You gotta watch out for that.
So from the standpoint of the amount of players who can play together, is there any limit?
I mean, I would say it's the same kind of sensical living as any RPG. Like if you play with, if you're going to play with a very large party, you're going to have things bogged down at some point. I would say that, most games kind of top out around 8 people.
Okay.
For an RPG, and I think that's just kind of like game mastering and RPGs 101 kind of thing.
Right.
You can play with 8 people. You'll have 8 actions because of that. So with a lot of your enemies, you'll probably mow down a lot of them very quickly, and leveling would probably slow down a lot from that. But when you hit the higher mob size entries, they start being based on the size of your party. So you may find yourself facing down like 40 monsters at one time,
Oh,
in which
wow.
case, yeah, you're gonna have a time with that, because that's gonna be a lot. It just sort of depends on how things go. So I would say it probably plays best in that like 4 to 8 range.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
say some of the play tests we've done, just like pairs. I've gone with like one other person, and that plays really well.
Okay.
That's been a really nice point where it kind of sings.
Okay.
Solos worked really well as well.
All right. So now the object of the game is to obviously survive. And this, it turns out to be a cooperative game, I would imagine, when you have other people playing, right?
Yep.
So basically, to win, you survive. That seems pretty straightforward.
I mean, that is the basics of it. Is like you're going to do your best to survive. With the way plot twists and things work, because there's leveling twist, which kind of has stuff that's personally going on with you. Plot twists are when you start running into things in the dungeons that are more unusual. Some of them are unusual places. There are places that are safe to be, which is nice. There are places that are sites where you can do magic that goes outside of the magic and skill system. So if you need to resurrect somebody, you might need to find a healing shrine.
Yeah, right.
You're not gotten to that point, but if you did, and you might find intelligent monster communities. And at that point, well, you can move a little away from the survival game, and it becomes a bit of a, can you socialize properly with them?
Right.
Because obviously civilization brings benefits with it that you can't get just surviving in the wild in whatever kind of environment you found yourself in. So like that's definitely some of the things can happen. And some of the other things is that, well, beyond just your regular run of the mill enemies you're going to run into, occasionally you will run into human adventurers who don't often ask questions first before
right.
So you may have some problems there, especially if you don't have any real good social skills. And I mean that literally, like you have the skills that let you speak their language. And even if you do speak their language, do you have something that will make them pay attention and listen to you? Are you charming, or are you just are you undead and they're not going to care?
Right.
Yeah, the unliving get some really cool advantages, but they will have the roughest time trying to be social with anybody else. So puts them in a bit of a tight spot as far as running into humans goes.
I could see that. So the game is in development and being play tested. What are the next steps?
The next steps right now, I'm in layout. I've got most of the layout done. The text is pretty much written. There's going to be some additional advice for being a game master with it. If you're going to play with a GM stance, and a little bit of extra advice for multiplayer to make sure that like things flow well. And the hope is to try and get it sometime early next month. Once that's out, I'll begin working on the deluxe edition of the game, which is going to go from having 16 to, I believe, if I do the math right, 64 different playable mobs in the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And yeah, there's some I'm kind of excited about. There's going to be specifically one group that is just 8-bit style bad guys in things.
Yeah, right.
So, and they're very generic, but they involve things like that guy that hides behind the shield the whole time and then just shoots at you once. Or there's a head that flies across the screen in an erratic pattern and makes your life miserable. So there's going to be some options to play some really out there stuff in the deluxe edition.
So now, are you gonna release this directly, or are you gonna run a Kickstarter?
I believe I'm going to release it directly.
Okay.
At this point, I think I don't know, like beyond getting some more art for the book, I don't think Kickstarter's really, I don't need Kickstarter to finish it. Like the
Right.
text is pretty much done already.
I'm really looking forward to trying to play the game at some point. I will wait for patiently for its release. And when that time comes, let me know, and I will make sure to update all the links down below in this video to point directly to it. I'm also going to include your website where they can find all of your amazing stuff that's already up there.
Yeah.
And again, when it gets time or close to release, let me know so I can break it on this channel first. And maybe we can all sit down and play a game. That'd be pretty awesome.
Oh no, that might actually be a whole lot of fun. I would really enjoy that.
Yeah, it just sounds. I mean, from the moment I heard about it, I was like, I have to find out more about it. It just sounds like it'd be so much fun to play. It's such a juxtaposition of what people play or how people play right now. Is you get to actually play the monsters, and you could be potentially attacking adventurers, and it's kind of like seeing behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's definitely taking things from a different stance, and I would be remiss to say that it is not inspired by specific anime. If you've not gotten the chance to see that time I got reincarnated as a slime, or So I'm a Spider, So What, I highly recommend them because they're definitely some of the inspiration for how this game has shaped up.
Well, very good. I know that I'm excited about it. I think my viewers are going to be excited about it. As soon as it drops, let me know so that way I can make sure everybody knows who's watching these videos. And I do appreciate you coming on and talking to me, and I just can't wait to play.
All right. Well, thanks very much.
Yeah, not a problem. Best of luck.